Okay, let us see a small introduction about SQLite database, and I'm going to create a simple project to start with. But ultimately, we will end up putting the same form which we use for add the items. So we will be integrating that as well. But this particular example, we primarily see what is SQLite and how I can write some helper methods in order to handle simple create, read, and update and retrieve functionalities. We often say CRUD. It means if you are using a database environment, should be having all four controls. If you have some methods written for it, you are almost done with that. So probably we can inherit or extend the method if at all required when complex queries are coming in. So let me create a project. And I'm going to create a database initially for a personalized purpose. So this is not a content provider. Content provider mean a same SQLite database environment, whereas it could be shared to a different application as well. But this is one exclusive one, so it is exclusive to one application itself. So let us start from there. And I already explained about the problem of having a theme which is given by your Eclipse, which is suggesting in order to keep hollow light dark action bar. So those who do not have issues, they can still go ahead with that. But if you have a problem with the app compact, some project which is getting added, if you have some problem, you can simply skip and go to the previous one by directly creating activity, and everything you can do it manually. We are planning to upgrade our Eclipse in coming weeks, so that problem would be addressed. So depends on your your Eclipse version or environment. Choose the appropriate choices. So I'm going to use the default one, blank activity. Let me keep the main activity itself. So it is done. Before, we have to make sure everything is working fine. So I'll install an emulator. Okay, so all looks fine. So default project is created. Now time to add SQLite. I'm going to create it as a helper class itself, so I'm going to define it everything externally, so that SQLite becomes a encapsulated one. Whenever required, we can use it. Same like utility class what we create. So you can create a separate package in order to keep it. It's up to you. So as of now, I'm going to make it um, something named mydb. Some name I'm going to give. Just a class. First point, few things we need to have it ready before getting into a database. Database name needed. What kind of database name you are planning to hold, and you need to keep a database table. I mean the name of the table and how many fields that table is going to contain, and in that which one is going to be a primary key. Those things are pre-required one in order to design a database, or schema designing, what we often call. A schema is consisting of the database and its table plans. So a table means a record. A table is going to hold set of records. Each record will be having the details separated in fields. So assume you can see a normal table. If you see the headings, that heading usually considered as a field here, or table fields. And as a group, as a table, it denotes is a set of records. So something I need to have it ready. So I'm going to define everything as a constants here. Something DB name, some database name, could be any name. Any name with any prefix suffix you can keep. There is no specific format of keeping a database name. I prefer to have a suffix .db, so I understand it is the name of a database, but naturally it should be just a string, could be any format. Depending on your requirement, you may have one table or more than one table, depends. Uh, but as of now, this example, I'm going to keep one single table. But if you have multiple tables, you can still have it under one single database. So I'll give an element name itself. Because that's what we are going to do. Some name and the fields. We already know what all the fields could be. So item name, we have already planned them. I want to keep the primary key. Okay, let it be. Keeping the primary key underscore ID gives you one more flexibility, because I already told you we can use a simple cursor adapter in order to display the data from a database directly to a list view. Simple cursor adapter is an adapter which can display the result set coming from a database directly to the list view. But it has one condition. The returning cursor or the returning result set should have a primary key defined as a underscore ID. It needs that particular format to be followed. But if you are not using simple cursor adapter, you can keep any name for it. So there's no restriction. So as of now, I'm just keeping it as it, because tomorrow I may use a simple cursor adapter. These are all the very familiar one. We already use such a objects which is of type constant. Name. So assuming I'm going to create a table called shopping table. Inside, these are all the fields is going to be. And apart from a couple of other constants also I may in need of. Database version. A database version, as far as SQLite concerned, for example, your app may receive multiple upgrades. Assume you are creating an application which holds a shopping list which contains 4 fields only, for 5 fields. Suddenly you want to attach one more field. So you will issue an application upgrade to Android Play Store, so that will be given to a respective user. So user will update your application. That time you want to update SQLite database schema also mean you can simply upgrade the DB version to set to 2 or incremental value. So automatically database will understand, okay, the table schema has got changed, so it has to attach or recreate the table schema. So maintaining a DB version helps us to issue further upgrades for our schema. So it's looking like I'm almost done. As I already explained, database is a separate engine. I mean, it is a separate library or whatever set of classes or functions written in some different language. Typically, it is written on C, C++. This SQLite is an open source community. It is not part of Android or something like it. It's a separate community. They give SQLite free because SQLite itself is a community product. For further detail on SQLite, you can refer Google it SQLite. You will see a separate community working on building a SQLite database engine. SQLite database engine is considered as one of a micro database engine, could be adapted to handsets or lower end devices. So it is not something like databases. RDBM is like Oracle or MySQL, which won't occupy more memory. It is very few KBs. So you will get the same flexibility to write complex queries or retrieve and set the data. So you have all the freedom of having, writing complex queries still, but it's still a small engine. So slightly it varies from a conventional database engines. One, it is common like for all the database you need to get a read or write access in order to access the data or modify the data. One, for that you need to get the permission of opening the database and then do a transaction and then close it when everything is done. This is a normal scenario of all the database engines. So we have to open, do a transaction, close it. But this open will vary across different database vendors. For example, if it is a MySQL or Oracle, you need to supply the username and password in order to open the database. Whereas some database may have some different scenarios in order to get the open or maybe trying to access the database. Whereas SQLite doesn't have that kind of scenarios. There is no username password because it's a very micro data, so we don't have that option. We can simply get access to open and close. Okay, first point, when you try to open the database, the engine has to check whether such a database exists or not. That is a very primary thing when you try to access a database. So we have to make sure our database first created. Then before thinking about doing a transaction with it. Transaction means the 4 operation what I talked, CRUD. Doing whatever associated with the data, either retrieving it or updating or deleting, whatever it is going to be, it is considered as a transaction. So in order to use the database, first point, we should have a clear schema in place. Schema means your plan. After that, I should start database creation process. I need to create the database. And once the database is successfully created, create the schema for your table. Define the plan for your table, create a table and with the respective fields. And then go ahead, think about doing a transaction. So this cycle is almost common for almost all the databases. This part I am going to do, what I am going to write is the process of creating the database. Okay. The database creation part, I am going to keep it as a separate class, maybe an inner class. I'm going to name it as a DB helper, some name. And already Android have set of SDKs or classes available in order to handle that database creation process. And I'm going to inherit one such a class in order to handle the database creation or whatever table creation process. SQLite open helper. Once I extend, it is asking me to implement a constructor. Even after constructor, it is asking me to implement some maybe it is it is having bunch of abstract methods inside. Some codes, some functions have been implemented. First one, there was a constructor mandatory, so it asked me to implement a constructor. I mean, add the constructor, it's not implementation, I should say. And two abstract methods also got implemented. It looks like it is called onCreate, another one is called onUpgrade. It is pretty familiar, like the same what we saw in IndexedDB in JavaScript. But unfortunately, not everybody knows, so I'm not going to connect with that. So this is also same like that. But IndexedDB also it came with a similar functionality. So right now what I'm doing is I'm about to create my database, and I'm also about to write a schema for my tables, and then think about doing a transaction. So I'm in a very first stage. Let us see what are all the arguments in a constructor. Context, obviously we know the instance of an activity or anything associated with the process which is calling the database. Another one, if you look at here, this will be more appropriate. And another one, the name of your database. Third one is a cursor factory. I'll explain about it a little later, but what I want to tell is here I'm going to use the word cursor. Uh, Usually Java developer call them as a result set, which is something coming from a database. After querying, you will get an object. That object will encapsulate various data specific to that query. One, primarily the result of a query, like what is the select statement, what you put, the data would be there, and couple of header information stating that or what kind of table schema it has, or what is the field name. Various information a result set will contain when you query it. Similar thing, I am going to call that as a cursor. Cursor is the result set after querying your database, and that cursor will contain your result. So typically what we need to understand as of now, cursor is a specific object. Since it is an Android, the cursor will be looking like a key value pair only, of course, naturally. So it's going to look like, but slightly different. Android by default gives us a specific property for a cursor, but if you want to change, for example, you want to modify the cursor class also, that is also possible. But if you do not modify, let it go ahead with the whatever default cursor property, you can set that part as a null. We are not going to do that, of course, but that is what the cursor factory. If you want to change the behavior of result set, you can still do it, but we are not going to. Another one is a version. So almost we have defined all those things. So what I'm going to do is context name. I think I'll remove the rest of the part, which will directly I'll give the values, because it's just a constructor. It is not a method which is coming from inherited class. So what is the name of my database? DB name. Factory, I am not going to modify the cursor factory, and the version DB version. The moment you write this constructor detail, assume your database has got created. A database called mydb got created. When database is successfully created, this method would be invoked. Same like activity lifecycle, some confirmation come to one block. When a database is successfully created, you will be having an access. Your method will be called an onCreate, confirming such a database has got created. In onCreate block, you can go ahead and start creating your table formats or table schemas. Now in this block, you can start defining tables. Now you need to tell me what is a create statement in SQL, standard query language. I want a create statement in order to create a table. If you remember, fine. Let me also try that. A typical create statement is going to be create table, okay, table name, Okay. Okay, so okay, field name. Okay, data type. It is a integer. It is specific to SQLite. Then okay, SQLite. If you define integer, automatically assign the size. We don't. We can skip that later. Okay, almost you're correct. Few things I need to do. One, I need to make it one first table as a primary key. That is going to be a primary key for me. The first one. And also I'm going to give a auto increment. Usually primary keys will be auto increment property add by default, but I'm not sure about the SQLite. So let me give that auto increment. This is the first one, so I'm going to make it as a ID, and so item name, it is of text. This is one single type called text because it's a small DB, so you don't have various varchar or something like that, just text. If you want to make it not null, you can make it. Sorry. Otherwise, you can keep it just text itself. So item, what do we have? Item price. Okay. So that is a number, right? Integer mean integer number. We call it as a real number, float values. And that also not null. And item quantity, that also a number, right? Not null. For better readability. And what we have, item notes, that is a text only. Then the brace is closed. That's it. A typical create statement may look like this. Okay, so I need to make a table name. In this case, what is the table name we have given? Shopping table. A typical name is going to look like this. So how I am going to do this? The instance of DB is available from the argument. Look for a method called execute SQL, which expect a string. You can simply enter the string inside. Okay, that's commenting. This will make sure your table is created. All it need to supply a standard query language formatted string inside that will create appropriate table for you. But in order to reuse my code, I'm going to do slightly small concatenation here in order to avoid errors. Here itself I have some errors. Item name is actually what I have used here is item underscore name. So by directly giving this way, chances are there you will end up making some errors. So I'm going to slightly concatenate this one. Shopping table is actually is called this one. So can I write like this? Just concatenated ID item ID item name What is that? Item name, price, quantity, right? So this will make sure a valid query return with the constants value whatever we separate. The cursor factory not needed now. So remember the spacing is very important because the create space table space something is coming. So do not simply make it, it will merge with that. So slightly give a space, and your item ID is going to be the primary key, and it is an integer. Primary key auto increment we have given, and then the next is item name which is of type text, another one price, so real, and quantity, notes, not null. We feel this is a slightly roundabout way, and I really don't want this one like to write like this. What I'll do, create a sorry, real not, here it is. So better control over, okay. So slightly made it as a constant. So create table, shopping table. Item ID, item name, price, quantity, notes, everything is done. Okay. So instead of calling this one, clean up. Just makes the code slightly cleaner. So a table has got created. First DB was created, later the table was created. Now time to handle the upgrade. For example, when you want to modify the schema. Most of the time dropping the existing table and recreating the table usually will happen if at all an upgrade comes. And you can check the upgrade part. If you increase the version, this on upgrade will be called. So what I'm going to do, can somebody tell me the drop statement? Drop table. Okay, table name. Otherwise I can put a safer if exist. Can I also put that, right? If exist, the table name. So caps lower and uppercase is something the DB query doesn't respect, so it's up to your choice. The name we gave table, shopping table. If such a table exists, it will drop it. and I can re-force it to create the DB. So again it will create the table. So it will drop it and recreate it. So dropping table will essentially kill all the data associated, and a new schema would be created. So usually a new schema would come here if at all you are giving a upgrade. So as of now, just I gave a signature left for it. You need to worry about this block only if you are planning for upgrades. If you want to uninstall, when the user uninstall the application, of course your DB itself will get cleared, so you don't need to worry about upgrade, mean forget about this block. But as of now I just kept that as well. So a helper part is done. So we have just created a database and tables under it, and we also handle upgrade instruction as well. So now an helper class is done. I'm going to initialize my DB helper, declare it. I also need an instance of SQLite database. I'm going to call it as DB. Not to be confused with this DB and that DB, that is a different instance of SQLite database. Now I'm going to need a constructor of this DB, public a constructor will have the same name of your class, we all know. It need an instance of a context in order to open the database, so I'm going to call the context from the argument, initializing DB helper a DB helper has got initialized with the incoming context coming from the constructor of this class myDB. This is one of a inner class. This is different entirely, so not to be confused with that. So a constructor is having initialization of an inner class instance. Now time to add methods for doing a transaction. What we have just done right now is we created the database, we created the table. That's all we created. But now we need to suitably open the database, get the right access, and do the transaction and close the database. Those methods I need to write now. I can write it one by one. I'm going to keep a public because it's outside access needed. Alright, open. These two methods will make sure the database is open and database is closed. How the database can be opened? I have declared the instance of a database DB using the DB helper. Get readable database. It means your database permission is granted. With the helper class, it will make sure the database is created, table is created, and it handovers a read access. Sorry, this is readable. Actually, we need a writable access in order to, of course, doing a transaction, we will modify, right? So once we get a database with the writable access, DB object is ready for you. And the close will do DB close. So naturally, database is closed. This is for open. This is for closing. Sometime I saw some exception being thrown. For safer side, I've seen this being thrown. So for safer side you can have it, but it is not mandatory. In order to handle, sometimes if your database is not, some reason the database is not opening, you will get an exception throwing so that you can read the log stating that okay, something went wrong. So I would recommend keeping an exception added to this method. So this is for opening and closing. Various ways to, now we need to do the transaction. Transaction ranges from reading, writing, updating and everything. So I mean reading, writing and deleting all comes under the transaction. Various ways to retrieve the data. One is using the standard query language such like this, forming a string which is formatted like a query language. Select star from shopping table where some sort of condition, some field equal to this or that. That way also you can form a query. So I'm going to write the format of that. Assume this is the format. So the query essentially a string. So can you tell me the select statement? Select star mean all fields. Okay. Where I by ID, so where item ID equal to I can form a query like this, right? This will give me a select star from shopping table where the item ID, whatever incoming item ID is concatenated, a query can be formed. So typical start a select statement. But I need to slightly modify in order to use it. But anyway, I'll go ahead and explain then I do. I already have access to DB. It is called raw query. Raw query means you are giving a straightforward query. Because Android already have some helper method in order to get the execute the query. But if you want to skip that, you want to write the queries directly, you can select a method called raw query. The first argument is what you have written, and they are recommending us to keep the selection arguments separately. Selection arguments nothing but the what you write after where. That's where the selection. So what are all the data type it is? So let me see. It is a selection argument is of type some string array. The query I need to slightly modify. Instead of giving item ID directly, I have to give a placeholder string with a question mark. That question mark, the value will be taken from here. Item ID is a integer, I need to convert into a string. It means your query will be, raw query will be taken, only it will look for a placeholder. That particular question mark is a placeholder. This question mark will be replaced by whatever you are sending here. So in this case, the first argument is item ID. Will be concatenated automatically here. So this one. So you may have multiple selection argument also. So and item name equal to another placeholder. We have two selection argument. You need to give something like here. I'm hard coding it. It means the first placeholder will sit here, the second placeholder will sit here, so it will form the query. So select start from shopping table where item ID with a given value and another one item name will be apple. The same order should be followed. So the first one will sit here, second one will sit here. So this is one way of executing a raw query. So the raw query will give a return type as a cursor result set. Once you execute the query, you will get a result set, or in this case, I'm going to say it's a cursor. That I could return it so that it can be used for transaction processing. So this is a way of executing a simplified raw query. Raw query means a pure query, like I concatenate a string in such a way I formed a query and supply it. But in a modern programming where a professional writing comes, nobody writes a query like this. We have to keep a specific objects in order to handle our data. So it is not recommended to write queries like this. You may have seen in our various enterprise application development, nobody writes a query like this. We convert the queries or result set into a specific object, we will make use of them. Like Hibernate or those kind of higher framework which does the job. Or you can create your own data object model in order to handle the transaction between. So you can avoid writing such a way. This is an error prone one. So one thing, chances are there you will make a lot of mistakes. Spacing itself is very important. Suddenly if I don't give a space here, select star from, there is no space in middle table, because the query will throw an error. So manually writing is not recommendable still, but you can also do it. For that I have written this method. Later I am going to write some of methods which will automate this process and will give you a error-free query retrieving. So you can avoid this kind of query writing. I have seen some developers feel comfortable with this type of query writing the entire query. They feel very easy because they can simply write. They don't need to depend on any methods or any additional functionalities. But seeing the feedback from various developers, this query makes a lot of issues, primarily not for the performance side, primarily on the spelling mistake or anything comes in. Even though I somehow managed it by concatenating, but if you forget the space or anything else, also will throw an error. A lot of code's already been added, and once I start running, I don't know what kind of error. So sometime I may have error in the create statement also, something I may forget spelling. So it is going to be very difficult if I make a mistake. So I have to avoid in further consequences. So I'm going to replace it with some of other helper methods. The same method, say new, I'll give a name. Same method, I'm going to rewrite it slightly. db dot query. If you see, there are choices available for me. Instead of raw query, there are a bunch of other choices also available for me. Query something. So in this table, string, column, selection, arguments, group by, having, order by, there are hell a lot of choices available. I would recommend using one such a function. So let me choose. I'm not going to have any limit or something. Limit mean it will give a limitation to your query. For example, 0 to 1 mean primary key from starting from first record to only one record. But I feel I don't need a limit now. Or I'll select the maximum used one. Let me select one. So the table, so everything is a function now, is an argument. Table name, shopping table. How many columns you want to retrieve? Mean I want to retrieve all the columns. So that is string of column. So I need to define a string of array of string. So better I'll create one more object, private string what are all the columns, item ID, item name, item notes, item price, item quantity. These are all the columns of my table. So I'll define, okay, already defined. Selection, of course, the conditional statement, the item ID, this one. So this is a string value, item ID equal a placeholder. Selection arguments, the same placeholder. I'm going to copy from here. It means it will form a query called selects various columns. So item ID, some select star from table where item ID equal to the supplied value. And group, I'm not going to group it. I don't have a having or any other. So if you do not want to use other fields, you can safely keep null if you do not want to use it. Am I missing anything? Yeah. Okay. So this will safely form the query behind the screen. It will automatically form a query. So select star from table name, shopping table, where the condition and whatever the condition already been specified. This will form the query for you, and you can safely return C. The second one is the recommended way of accessing your database. Avoid writing query which is of type something raw. Don't try to form a query through a string and directly write it. It is easy, but it is prone to make a lot of errors and give a lot of headache on your debugging. If you are comfortable, fine. But this later part, make sure you write the query, form the query through some function, and which will always be error free. I'm going to use the second one quite often. I'm going to use it widely. If at all a complex query comes, I will go to raw query. But two-way you can form the query. So two methodologies I have given here. One is writing the query directly by forming or concatenating or adjusting a string and giving the placeholder for your where condition. The second one, using the built-in function, what the query is, function called query, and give the arguments depending on your requirement. Whichever not applicable, you can keep it null. So this particular statement or would form select star from shopping table where item ID equal to the value which is coming through the function, and it will give you a result set called cursor. I'll let you know how to use the cursor in the afternoon session. So how to unpack the cursor and retrieve back the data from the database. So I only have two more methods left. One is for update, another one for delete. Once I add it, this class we can use it for a reusable class, so we can copy paste it wherever required. I can make it for my saving purpose. If at all you want to modify further, change the constant value, reuse it and use for other projects. That's the benefit of having everything defined on the top of a constant. I want to change the database version, simply modify it and use it. So this kind of flexibility you have if you define everything through global and constant, if something is getting repeated quite often. So the whole bunch will become a reusable code. So I will add those additional helper functions, and then we will see in example how the data could be displayed in list view or through log or through some other way I can insert and retrieve the data. So that's what we are going to do in the afternoon session. I'm not going to upload the code now, so I'll just leave it for you as the reference here itself. It's almost 12:35 now. So you guys can go for a lunch break, come up freshly. We still have something to left, to discuss, and we'll continue them in the afternoon session.